What the fuck is up, everyone? Prison Meddler here, back with another reviewing and rating album series. And today I am reviewing Megadeth. Yeah, Megadeth, a thrash metal band out of the Big Four. So yeah, just like my other videos, I'm not reviewing EPs, compilations, demos, etc. Just the studio albums only. So yeah. And from 0 out of 5 being the worst, and 5 out of 5 being the best. So, yeah, besides all that, let's go ahead and begin. Alright, next up we got is Killing Is My Business and Business Is Good, released June 12, 1985, with no singles released. This album, I'll say this, out of the Big Four thrash debuts, this is probably my least favorite. Mainly because it's mainly because of production. It sounds way too raw. I mean, I like raw production too, but this one is just over the top raw. And the production is kind of shit at times. But as the songwriting and the lyrics, the vocals, it's great. I mean, the lyrics explore themes of death, occultism, and violence. And it's basically... And Dave sounded pretty angry throughout the album. Sounded like he was angry after he was kicked out of Metallica due to his reckless behavior. And as you may know, the song Mechanics was originally a Metallica song. But since Dave was fired from the band, he told the bands not to use his songs that he wrote. Which they kind of did at some point in some of the albums, even though they credited him. I mean, Mechanics is pretty much like Megadeth's version of the Four Horsemen. But after that, besides all that, the production itself is kind of raw, and the album is pretty much too short, but as for the rest, it's pretty decent on the most part. I do think it's a pretty solid album. Definitely one of those albums to get pissed off if you're into like classic thrash metal shit, you know, with the speed metal elements. So yeah, other than that, I pretty much do think this is quite a solid album. So I give us a 3 out of 5. I feel like I do think this is a pretty decent album overall. So yeah, definitely a solid thrash debut. Alright, next up we got is Peace Sells But Who's Buying, released September 19, 1986, with 2 singles, Wake Up Dead and Peace Sells. So yeah, what do I have to give this album? A thrash metal classic, that's for damn sure. I mean, definitely a massive improvement over Killing Is My Business. It has better production as well, too. I mean, tons of classic fucking songs, like Wake Up Dead, which is the opening. Love the solos, love the riffs. The Conjuring, Peace Sells, definitely a fucking classic song. I think that's probably one of the most biggest hit songs, Peace Sells. Devil's Island's great. Good Morning Black Friday is like one of my favorite Megadeth songs of all time. Definitely love that song. Bad Omen's good. I Ain't Superstitious, which is a cover by Willie Dixon. Or Howling Wolf, I should say. And the last song is My Last Words. So yeah, it's kind of a more cleaned up version of Killing Is My Business, mainly because of production. But unlike the previous album, this album features more of politics, such as the government being corrupt and all that. This one pretty much, the lyrical themes pretty much abandoned the violent rage materials and pretty much focus more on the more important shit. But yeah, as for that, thrash metal classic, I should say. Definitely one of the best thrash albums of all time. So I'm feeling a 4.5 out of 5 on this album. This is definitely a classic fucking record. May not be as strong as Master of Puppets or Rain and Blood, but it's still a very, very classic album, very strong album. It's definitely one of the gateways to albums to the thrash metal genre. So, yeah, definitely a classic album. Alrighty, next up we got is So Far So Good So What, released January 1988. Sorry. With 4 singles released. In My Darkest Hour, released June 17th. Hook and Mouth, released January 11th, 1989. Anarchy in the UK, released February 17th. And Mary Jane, released May 12th, 1989. Now with this album, I'd say it's weaker compared to Peace Sells, but Who's Buying, but I think it's better than Killing Is My Business. It's kind of a lot more similar to it. I know there's a lineup change, and I think this is the only album with Jeff Young and Chuck Beller on drums. So yeah, this is the only album with those 2 members on there. But as with the album goes, it's a really pretty good album, I should say. May not be a very strong, maybe not one of the best albums in the 80s, maybe not one of the best thrash albums, maybe not one of the best Megadeth albums, but it's kind of at a high tier list, you know. It has plenty of great songs on there, such as the instrumental track Into the Lungs of Hell. Then we got Set the World Afire, which is a great song. I'm going to tell you all the truth. I did not care for the song, the Sex Pistols song. I loved the Sex Pistols, but I did not care for their cover song, to be honest. Mary Jane is solid. 502 is kind of a funny song. In My Darkest Hour is definitely one of Megadeth's best songs ever. This song is pretty much a tribute to Cliff Burton, who was a bassist from Metallica, and since Dave is pretty close with Cliff Burton, as we know, since Dave pretty much took it personal because at the time, Lars and James refused to contact Dave, and I don't think they were ever on speaking terms up until they were somewhat on good terms until the 90s, and try to make amends. And they've been pretty much neutral. I think they're still kind of neutral. I know on the Big Four, Dave is pretty much friends somewhat mainly with Lars. I know he's seen talking with him. I don't know if they're friends or neutral, but they're not enemies anymore. But yeah, Dave took it personal of how his frustration goes about not hearing about Cliff Burton's death. He was extremely depressed about it. And yeah, it kind of seems like Dave has no hatred towards Cliff Burton. I don't think Cliff Burton was involved in any of the beef between Dave and James Hetfield and Lars Ulrich. So I kind of think that I could be wrong. So yeah, one of my favorite songs of all time, In My Darkest Hour. It feels like a tribute song to Cliff Burton. And then we got Liar, which is basically a diss track towards Chris Poland. And then we got the classic closing track, Hook and Mouth. But yeah, as with this album, I do think this is a pretty good album. Not one of the best, but pretty good album in general. Because it did have some moments that I just don't care for. But other than all, pretty good album. So I'm feeling a 3.5 out of 5 on this album. I definitely think this is a pretty good album. Alright, next up we got is Rust in Peace, released September 24th, 1990, with 2 singles. Holy War's The Punishment Due, released September 23rd, and Hangar 18, released February 4, 1991. Where am I supposed to start with this album? It's fucking amazing. One of the best thrash albums of all time. Also the first album with Marty Friedman and Nick Menza. In my opinion, I think this is the best Megadeth lineup, the Rust in Peace lineup, in my opinion. I feel like Dave made a perfect choice hiring these two. Fun fact, I think Dimebag Darrell from Pantera was originally going to be a guitarist for this album, but he declined because he wanted Vinnie Paul, who's his brother, to be hired as well. So yeah, fun fact: Dimebag Darrell was originally going to be a guitarist for the album, but he declined. So, but other than that, I couldn't imagine having Dimebag Darrell being in Megadeth. So yeah, and Jeff Waters from Annihilator was also considered, but for some reason I think he declined as well. So yeah, besides all that, whether he was here or not, amazing fucking record. All the songs are just perfect. Absolutely perfect. I mean, lyrical content, as you may know, it's about the government being corrupt. It's just perfect. And the UFOs and all that. All this album has more of a technical songwriting than their previous albums too, which makes this album so amazing. Guitar solos, especially from Marty Friedman, absolute perfect. I think my favorite solo from Dave is definitely the Holy War's Punishment Due guitar solo. It was just fucking perfect. Hangar 18, amazing track. Take No Prisoners, it's just a very technical riffing song. Five Magics, one of their most underrated songs. This song doesn't get talked about a lot for some apparent reason. I don't really need to go into further details. This album is just flat out perfect. In fact, this is probably my favorite thrash album of all time. And if you're starting to get into Megadeth, this is the start. This album is a major start for you. This album is just fucking perfect. So, yeah, you know how I'm going to rate this, a 5 out of 5. This is a fucking perfect album. In fact, this is the best album of 1990 in my opinion. And the best thrash album in my opinion. Yeah, yes, I think it's better than Master of Puppets and Ride the Lightning and Rain of Blood. Yeah, this album is perfect. Definitely my favorite album from the Big Four. This is my number one pick. Rust in Peace. Fucking perfect album. Alrighty, next up we got is Countdown to Extinction. No, not Symphony of Destruction. That's the song from the album. Released July 14, 1992 with 4 singles. Symphony of Destruction, released July 21st. Foreclosure of a Dream, released October 13th. Sweating Bullets, released February 16, 1993. And Skin on My Teeth, released April 12th, 1993. And yeah, another great album. I mean, yeah, the album, I consider this to be Megadeth's Black Album because it has more of a radio-friendly type sounding song, but it's still really great. And yes, this may be controversial. I think this album is a little bit better than the Black Album, to tell you the truth. I mean, they kind of they still kept their elements from their previous album, but it sounds much more radio-friendly. Which is nothing wrong with that. I'm not trying to diss it or anything. It's just, I'm not saying there's something wrong with it, because there's not. I mean, I pretty much like all the songs. Skin on My Teeth, which is a great way to open the track. Pretty much, it's one of the most simple songs by Megadeth, but it's still really good. Chorus is catchy too. And then we got Symphony of Destruction. As I mean, know, it's criticism towards the government. And it's definitely one of their biggest hit songs of all time. And then we got the third track, Architecture of Aggression, which is a great song. Foreclosure of a Dream is one of my favorite Megadeth songs of all time. I do enjoy that one. Sweating Bullets is another amazing song. I kind of compare this to be Megadeth's Sad But True, to be honest with you. I know, it's kind of weird comparison, but I don't know what else to say. This Was My Life is good. Pretty much all the songs are great. I just definitely enjoy this album throughout, so yeah. I don't know what else to say. This is definitely the same lineup. Again, the Rust in Peace lineup is my favorite lineup. Yeah, I don't have anything bad else to say, but it's definitely not as strong as Rust in Peace, but it's still a really great album. So I'm feeling this a strong 4 out of 5, a little bit close to 4.5, but it's mainly 4 out of 5. So yeah, this is definitely a really great album, definitely a classic album from Megadeth. Alright, next up we got is Euthanasia, released November 1st, 1994, with 2 singles. Train of Consequences, released November 10th, and A Total Monday, released February 1995. And yeah, this album did have some major changes. This album completely abandoned the thrash metal genre, leaning towards a traditional heavy metal sounding. If you guys don't know what traditional heavy metal is, it's mainly bands like Iron Maiden, Judas Priest, Black Sabbath, Motorhead. I think Motorhead is more speed metal, but it could also be classified as traditional heavy metal. This album is more like a traditional heavy metal sound, and it still sounds great. Now, I'll admit, years ago, I did not care for this album. I kind of feel like, I don't know, it's just feel like a B-side from previous track, but as soon as I keep listening to more, I'm starting to like it a lot more, and it kind of sounded better each time I listened to it. I definitely think this is a really great album in general. Jesus. Sorry, fucking fly flew in my mouth. God damn. I'm sorry about that. Anyway, shit. Ugh. Sorry, guys. I didn't, that happened out of nowhere. It's summer. Of course, there's gonna be flies everywhere. But anyway, yeah, back to it. Other than that, tons of great songs. Reckoning Day, Train of Consequences, Addicted to Chaos, Total Monday. Pretty much all songs I do like. I feel like it has the best vocals from Dave Mustaine as well. I mean, it feels like he has a very strong voice in this album, which usually his voice sounds very rapsy, mainly in his thrash metal elements, but this one, it sounds much more clear and sounds more melodic compared to the other albums. But yeah, other than that, I do think this is another great album from Megadeth. I can see why this is one of the greater albums from Megadeth. So yeah, definitely a great album. I can agree with that now. So I'm feeling a solid 4 out of 5. Not as good as Countdown to Extinction, but it's not close to a 4.5. It's just the middle 4 out of 5. That's all. So yeah, I do think Euthanasia is a very great album. That's all. Alrighty, next up we got is Cryptic Writings, released June 17, 1997, with only 4 singles released. Trust, released May 8th. Almost Honest, released November 26th. Using Man, released December, but there's no date. And Secret Place, released February 1998. And honestly, really solid album. Not gonna lie. Pretty underrated too. This album is pretty much a better version of Load, to tell you the truth. It's pretty much more like a softer version of Euthanasia, but it's still really good. I mean, Dave still has his vocals, you know. And some of the songs kind of sound grungy at times. It kind of sounds a bit like Alice in Chains at times, but it does sound really good too. I mean, Trust is definitely one of Megadeth's best songs. Almost Honest is good. Using Man is great. Which, it's more like a rock sounding track. And then All Get Even sounds good. It kind of sounds a little grungy or softer. I wouldn't say it's grunge. It's more like a rock tune sounding track. But it's still really good. She Wolf is actually a great song. I do enjoy that one. But yeah, pretty much all songs I do like. It's pretty much like a nice, catchy radio rock sounding type album, but it sounds really good. Double F is a great track. I'm not gonna lie. She Wolf, yeah, I mentioned about She Wolf. Yeah, I don't know what else to say. It's just another radio rock Megadeth album. It sounds a lot more similar to Euthanasia, just more softer. That's all. I feel like that's how Metallica's Load should have sounded like with this album. So yeah, I'm feeling a 3.5 out of 5 on this album. I definitely think this is a good album. Pretty underrated too. I'm not gonna lie. Alrighty. Next up we got is Risk. Released August 31st, 1999 with only 3 singles. Crush 'Em, released May 26. Breadline, released February 16, 2000. And Insomnia. Yeah. Is this really a Megadeth album? Because I don't think so. I don't know what the hell is going on here with this album. I mean, this... I pretty much compare this to Load and Reload. I mean, this is the first album with Jimmy DeGrasso as the drummer. I forgot for how long, but it's just him drumming. That's pretty much it. Nothing new here. In the last with Marty Friedman. And this is the last album he has to be on the shitty album. Come on. What the hell is going on here? Yeah, I just can't stand this direction they were going. It just sounds softer. This is not the Megadeth I like, to tell you the truth. Just has this alternative rock type sound. I mean, the album starts off with Insomnia, which is pretty much an industrial rock track. And then we got Prince of Darkness, which is one of the better songs, but still not good. Enter Arena, which is just the intro to Crush 'Em, and an odd one too. Don't get me started on Crush 'Em, which is basically a sports anthem. Breadline, I'll admit, Breadline is alright. It's one of the okay songs on there. Doctor's Calling is boring as fuck. And the rest, just dog shit. Yeah, I don't know. This is like the worst version of Load or Reload, to be honest. Mainly Reload, but worse. So yeah, I just did not like this direction. As you may know, he got this advice from Lars Ulrich that he should be taking more risks in his music. And oh yes, he did. And not in a good way. I mean, basically Megadeth tried to be like Metallica by selling out, but the album would definitely sell out if you removed the term death on your band name. I don't know if that's the case. I don't know. But, yeah. In fact, I'm not going to mention about the remastered. I'm not going to bother it. It's slightly different than the original. Just less electronic, but it kind of doesn't really matter. Because it's still bad. Yeah. I mean, this album is just lame, boring. I kind of want to fall asleep each time I listen to this album. It's just not good. So, yeah, I'm going to give this a 1.5 out of 5 on this album. It's a pretty bad album. And at least they never did this shit ever again after this. So, yeah, it's bad. But it's not their worst album. No, not yet. Maybe their worst at the time, but it's not their worst album. We'll get to that soon. Alrighty, next up we got is The World Needs a Hero, released May 15, 2001, with 2 singles, Motorcycle and Dread and The Fugitive Mind. And yeah, all I have to say about it is it's an improvement over Risk. It did brought back the heavier moments with some thrash elements. I'll give it that. But is the album good? No, I just do not like the production. It has a lot of filler in it, and it's just not very original compared to other Megadeth material. I mean, it's just, I don't know. I mean, yeah, it's better than Risk, but it's still not a very good album, if you know what I mean. I mean, yeah, I do like this song Disconnect. I do like Motorcycle. Dread in the Future in Mind is cool, and that's kind of it. There are some moments I just don't like about this album. I just did not like the song Return to Hangar, which is basically a sequel to Hangar 1858, and it just sounds like it was very poorly executed. The structure doesn't sound very strong. And as for the song Win, which I thought it would be like an epic track to close the album, it's basically a compilation of Metallica songs that Dave wrote. So yeah, other than that, not a good album, but I've heard worse. You know, I mean, as I may know, it's not very original, but I mean, it did have some qualities here and there on this album. I'll give it that, but I'll say it's not a good album. I'll just leave it at that. So I'm feeling a 2 out of 5 on this album. It's just a very poorly written, executed album. That's all. And I also noticed that this was originally supposed to be a final Megadeth album because I think at the time Dave had an injury on his wrist that kind of prevented him from playing guitar, but turned out he came back with a new album in 2004, and we are going to go ahead and talk about that now. Alright, next up we got is The System Has Failed, released September 14, 2004. 3 singles: Die Dead Enough, released June 26th, Of Mice and Men, and The Scorpion, released May 10th, 2005. And yeah, I'll say this: major improvement over the last 2 albums. Pretty much brought back to their old roots, even though they went back to the thrash roots, even though they still continue with their traditional heavy metal sound pretty much the rest of their discography. Again, I don't know what else to say. Great riffs, great solos, everything. I wouldn't complain about it. Probably one of their most underrated albums to date, I have to say. This is a pretty enjoyable album. Tons of underrated songs too, like Blackmail the Universe. It's actually a great song, by the way, by Megadeth. It's pretty much a very highlighted track of the album, since it's pretty much a Return to Roots album. And fun fact, this brought back Chris Poland temporarily. They seem to, make amends, but now they're no longer speaking terms for some apparent reason. I think it's for some lawsuit or whatever. But besides all that, really great guitar work. I don't know what to say. I have to say is it's Megadeth being Megadeth. So, yeah, great Return to Roots album. So, I'm giving us a 3.5 out of 5. Definitely a good album. Pretty underrated too. That's all. Alright, next up we got is United Abominations, released May 15, 2007, with 3 singles, or 4 actually. Gears of War, released November 22nd, A Total Monday Set Me Free / Sleepwalker, released April 23rd, and Never Walk Alone, A Call to Arms, released September 26th. So, yeah, another solid album. Pretty much the same from their previous album. As some of you know, the lyrics deals with politics and state the world is in. all of that. It's just basically Megadeth being Megadeth, I should say. I mean, the songwriting is great. There features one song with a re-recorded called "I Totally Mind That Set Me Free," which is re-recorded from Euthanasia, which features Christina Scabia from Lacuna Coil, and it has some pretty decent songwriting too. As let me know. However, as let me know, the song Gears of War is actually kind of a soundtrack to the game Gears of War, which came out, which is one of my favorite video games of all time. And then we got the opening track, Sleepwalker, which is definitely a great way. I definitely like the riffs. Just like throughout this album, great riffs, solid solos. I say pretty good album overall. I mean, there's really nothing else to it. It's just another Megadeth album. I don't really know what else to say. It pretty much kind of brought back to their same roots. So, yeah, I guess this is pretty much a Megadeth that many people ask for. So, yeah, nothing else to say here. So, I'm feeling a 3.5 out of 5. I think it's a pretty good album overall. So, I don't really have anything else to say about it. So, I'm going to go ahead and move on. Alright, next up we got is In-Game, released September 15th, 2009. 2 singles, Head Crusher, released July 7th, 2009. And The Right to Go Insane, released April 9th, 2010. And to be honest, this is probably the best Megadeth album in the 2000s. Like, no joke. I mean, such a great album. Definitely their best in quite a long time, to be honest. This is such a great album. I pretty much like all the songs from here. Starts with the instrumental, Dielectric Chaos. And then we got The Day We Fight, which is a great song. It's kind of like with Into the Lungs of Hell and Set the World on Fire from their album So Far So Good So What, with the songs Into the Lungs of Hell and Set the World Afire. That's what these 2 instrumental tracks really are. I pretty much like every single track from this album. This one is pretty much their Return to Roots album. This is pretty much Megadeth's Death Magnetic, to tell you the truth. That's how I would consider this album, but it's way better than Death Magnetic, that's for sure. Head Crusher is such a fantastic song. I mean, you can't really go wrong about this song. Such a great song. So yeah, I don't know what else to say. Definitely a major improvement. So yeah, I don't know what else to say. It's Megadeth being Megadeth, but a major upgrade from their definitely his Return to Roots album, that's for sure. So yeah, I'm feeling a 4 out of 5 on this album. Definitely a great album. I don't know what else to say. I'm just going to go ahead and move on. Alrighty, next up we got is 13, released November 1st, 2011, with 4 singles. Sudden Death, released September 24, 2010. Sorry, my voice cracked. Public Enemy number 1, released September 13, 2011. Never Dead, and released September 2011. And Whose Life Is It Anyways, released October 17th, 2011. And that's what this album, not as good as their last 3 albums, to tell you the truth. It's way too similar, but I don't know. It's not bad or anything. It just sounds way too similar. It feels like a B-side to their previous album. And it has more filler songs on this album, to tell you the truth. But the album isn't bad. I'll say that. It's not a bad album by any means. I say it's one of their weaker albums. But there's plenty of enjoyable songs, such as Sudden Death. Public Enemy Number One's actually a great song. Whose Life Is It Anyway? Guns, Drugs, and Money is good. New World Order and 13, and that's pretty much it. The rest, I mean, I wouldn't say they're bad songs. It's just, I'd say they're pretty forgettable. That's all. So, yeah, I don't really have nothing else to say. The album is produced by Johnny K, who's known for producing album. He also produced Disturbed's, The Sickness, first 3 albums. He also produced Mushroom Head's 13. And that's... I forgot what else. And several albums from Three Doors Down. He's known for producing butt rock albums. But I don't see what's butt rock about this album, so... Yeah, I'd say it's an alright album. Definitely one of their weaker ones, so... I'm feeling a 2.5 out of 5 on this album. Kind of a step down from their previous albums, to tell you the truth, but it's not terrible or anything. It's just, I just don't go back to it, that's all. Alright, next up we got is Super Collider, released June 4, 2013, with 3 singles. Super Collider, released April 23rd, Keymaker, released May 18th, 2013, and Burn, which there's no date for it. Yes, guys, spoiler alert. This is definitely their worst album. This album is pretty bad. Really bad, I should say. First of all, it pretty much went back to their rock materials. I mean, I do like it in their 90s, but this one is just, real outdated. A massive step down. I mean, yes, 13 is kind of a step down album too, but I let that one slide since it is kind of consistent. Unlike with this album, since it's not consistent, it's pretty much, I don't know. The main reason why I can't stand this album, I used to like this album at first, but nowadays not anymore. Dave's vocals, the reason why I don't like this is because of Dave's vocals. He sounds like a fucking duck in this album. That's what he sounds like. He sounds like a duck. I don't like any songs on there, except maybe the opening track, Keymaker, but that's about it. The rest is just pure ass. Yeah. I don't know what else to say. This album is a total dog shit album. Absolute dog shit. Like, what the hell? Are you on drugs or something? What is this? And I thought Risk was their worst album, but no, I guess I was wrong. I mean, yeah. I mean, the reason why I think Risk is kind of better than Super Collider is because Dave didn't sound like a duck in that album. He did not sound like a duck in Risk, but this album he does. So yeah, fuck this album. This album sucks. 1 out of 5. Terrible album. That's all. I'm gonna go ahead and stop talking about this anymore. This is Megadeth Saint Anger, I should say. Alright, next up we got is Dystopia, released January 22nd, 2016, with only 4 singles. Fatal Illusion, released October 1st, 2015. The Threat Is Real, released November 25th, 2015. Dystopia, released January 7th, 2016. And Post American World, released July 19th, 2016. And as let me know, this is the band's final album with David Ellefson from Megadeth, since he came back from 13, and now this is his final album. And this is the final Megadeth album for quite a while, for a couple of years, since since the band has been going through so much during around that period. And yeah, as let me know, 10 times better than Super Collider. It brought back the thrash elements again. Since their last album, they want to go back to their, generic butt rock sound, with Dave sounding like a duck in this album. I mean, I don't have a problem with Megadeth going back to rock. I just don't like Dave's vocals in the previous album. But this album, it went back to their thrash roots with some elements of traditional heavy metal. But it's either way, I prefer this sound. I'd rather have Megadeth make the same album than have Megadeth go back to their rock roots with the ugly sounding vocals. But this album is great. I mean, this album had some different moments compared to the previous album. They pretty much dropped down to standard D tuning, since their previous albums were mostly standard tuning, standard E tuning, which is the original tuning for a guitar. And yeah, great songs. Threat is Real, Dystopia, Fatal Illusion, Death from Within. And as some of you know, the deluxe edition has bonus tracks that are in the middle of the album instead of at the end. I mean, it's one of those few albums that has, the bonus tracks that are in the album instead at the near end, which I pretty much considered it as like an extended version. But yeah, definitely a really great album. I love the guitar solos, amazing riffs. I love how this album opens with The Threat is Real. Sounds like I kind of like this D-tuning sound for Megadeth. It kind of has this darker sounding tuning, and the lyrics pretty much match to it. As I know, with the usual... This album, as I know, usual Megadeth Dave sings about, like, the government being corrupt, but with this album, it's more focused about world history and crazy scientific stuff, which is a pretty much a different... I kind of like it when they try to do different things with their lyrical content, and it definitely works well with the song as well. But yeah, I mean, it's another great album. Definitely one of the best albums of 2016, so yeah, definitely one of their best modern Megadeth albums. So I'm feeling a 4 out of 5 on this album. It's a really great album. I don't know what else I could say about it. Definitely a major improvement over Super Collider, that's for fucking sure. Alrighty, next up, which is their latest album, we got is The Sick, The Dying, and The Dead, released September 2nd, 2022, with 6 singles. We'll Be Back, released June 23rd. Night Stalkers, released July 22nd. Soldier On, released August 12th. Sick, Dying, and the Dead, released September 2nd, the day the album was released. Life in Hell, released October 20th. And Killing Time, released December 16th. And yeah, finally a Megadeth album that hasn't been released in a couple of years. As let me know, production started in 2019. There was going to be a Megadeth that's expected to be released by 2019 to 2020. And the reason for the delays is because at the time in 2019, Dave had throat cancer. And the year later in 2020, he had COVID, where COVID became a big deal back in 2020 than it was right now. And then until 2021, David Ellefson got fired from Megadeth due to allegations of sexual misconduct. So, as let me know, the bass parts were taken out from the album, and it was recorded by Testament's Steve DiGiorgio. I can't pronounce his name, to be honest with you. But yeah, but as far as the album goes, yes, it's a lot similar to Dystopia. I wouldn't say this album is as strong as Dystopia, but it's still a really good album. I mean, it has a lot of great moments throughout this album, and it's definitely what Megadeth fans would want throughout this album. I mean, the album continues off with their standard detuning. I feel like each time Megadeth makes an album, one, especially their modern era, it's pretty much one album was just thrash, next album is just thrash with with more elements of traditional heavy metal, and the next album is thrash. Exceptions for certain albums like fucking Super Collider. And I'm going to be honest, I have no problem with that at all. Even if it's more like a traditional heavy metal album, I would not diss it. I would not complain anything about that. I know some of you may think it's a bad thing, but it's not. I don't think it's not at all. I mean, it still has a lot of thrash elements. Don't get me wrong. It's still, Night Stalkers, which features Ice-T. I'm going to be honest with you. I don't think Ice-T is necessary in a Megadeth song, to be honest with you. Ice-T was pretty much here for like about 15 to 20 seconds in an interlude. That's about it. It's pretty much like a spoken word type. And I just don't think he was necessary to be in it. Yeah, he's a great rapper, but I just don't like the idea of having rappers in a thrash song. I mean, yeah, I know he's a vocalist and body count and all that, which they're good, but I just don't think he fits in a Megadeth song, to tell you the truth. I'm not saying it's bad, but I just don't think it's necessary. It's just not necessary for him to be on there, to be honest with you. But Night Stalker is still a great song, by the way. I just don't think Ice-T is necessary, that's all. Dogs of Chernobyl, such a great song. I definitely enjoy that one. I think after Night Stalkers, the songs on here pretty much turn into a more traditional heavy metal sound, which is still great. I'm not saying it's a bad thing, okay? Just don't take this as the wrong way. It kind of has more of this melodic sound to it after the song Night Stalkers. It sounds like a much more melodic version of Dystopia. And it still sounds good. It kind of has the instrumentation kind of has some of the melodic death metal sound. No, it's not melodic death metal. It's just the instrumentation that kind of sounds like it. And then we got back to the final track, We'll Be Back, which pretty much brought back to the thrash days of Megadeth. It's definitely, riffs is great, guitar solos is great, everything is great. And I'm not going to talk about the bonus tracks because those are covers and I'm pretty much ignoring them. So unless if it's original tracks, yeah, I would review them, but those are all of them are covers, which I'm going to be ignoring that. But besides all that, I do think it's a really good album. I mean, probably not as strong as Dystopia, but it's a pretty solid album. And yes, I'm going to be honest with you. I prefer this album over Metallica 72 Seasons, to be honest with you. At least this album is nowhere near as long as 72 Seasons. I mean, 72 Seasons is definitely enjoyable, but I think this is more enjoyable. So, yeah. I'm giving this album a 3.5 out of 5. I definitely think this is a pretty good album. And I will definitely be checking out the next album if they're ever... I don't know if they're planning on doing it or not. I don't know. It may not be... I don't know nowadays. They're kind of unpredictable. Especially albums they've released for over 6 years. I kind of think they're less predictable in releasing an album nowadays. I don't know. They might release it next year. I don't know. Who knows? But I'll definitely be looking forward to it. I just don't want another album like Super Collider. I don't want a traditional... I don't mind a traditional heavy metal album by Megadeth. I just don't want Dave sounding like a duck. That's all. Like he did with Super Collider. That's all. Alright guys, so that is my reviewing and rating every album from Megadeth. So what is your rating on it? Let me know in the comments. And yeah guys, I don't know what band or artist I'm doing next. So yeah, I'll think of it whenever I have in mind. So yeah guys, that's pretty much it. And I'm going to go ahead and get the fuck out of here. So I'm out.